Imagine this. You're Arthur Sinclair, a millionaire, powerful, accustomed to getting what you want. But right now, you're stranded, helpless on a scorching roadside with a flat tire. Then a young boy appears. Looks like he doesn't have much, but he fixes your tire with surprising skill. You offer him a generous reward, a thick wad of cash. Here, you insist, take this, for your time and effort. But the boy just looks you in the eye, steps back and says calmly, "Thank you, sir, but I don't need anything, just happy to help." What do you do then? Why would he refuse? That single moment, that simple, unexpected refusal, kicks off an incredible, life-altering journey. It forces a man who thought he had everything to question it all and learn the most expensive lesson life can offer, a lesson money could never buy. How would you react if you were the millionaire? Tell us in the comments. If you're intrigued by this unexpected encounter, hit that like button right now. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications because you need to see how this story unfolds. Stick with us to the very end to witness a truly unbelievable transformation. Power was useless here, absolutely useless. On this lonely Kentucky road, Arthur Sinclair learned that lesson fast. His billions couldn't fix a flat tire. His influence couldn't summon a signal. He was simply stranded. The afternoon heat pressed down, a heavy, suffocating blanket. Inside the silver Mercedes, the air conditioner hummed a weak protest. It was losing the battle. Arthur tapped the leather steering wheel, a sharp, impatient rhythm. Waiting. He despised waiting. His world operated on his schedule, his commands. Not on the whims of chance and bad tires. He glanced at his phone. Again, still dead. No bars, just a blank, mocking screen. He sighed. The sound felt small in the luxurious, silent cabin. Miles away, his mansion waited. Cool marble floors, silent staff. Perfect solitude, but this felt different. This wasn't chosen isolation, this was impotence. A raw, uncomfortable feeling for a man who controlled so much. He leaned his head back, closed his eyes for a moment. The silence outside wasn't peaceful. It was empty, vast. It reminded him uncomfortably of certain quiet moments in his own life. Moments between deals, between acquisitions. Moments filled with everything money could buy. Except connection. Then something changed. A flicker of movement in the shimmering heat haze down the road. Arthur opened his eyes, squinted. A figure emerged, small, walking steadily towards him. It resolved into a boy. 13, maybe 14 years old. The boy wore clothes that spoke of humble means. A t-shirt faded by the sun, jeans coated in red dust, sneakers that looked ready to give up. Yet he walked with purpose. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, scanned the car, noted the flat tire. He didn't stare at the expensive vehicle. He assessed the situation. Then he looked directly at Arthur. A polite nod, surprisingly confident. "Got a flat, sir?" The voice was clear, steady, no hint of nervousness. Arthur cleared his throat. A strange mix of relief and caution surfaced. Yes, I do," he confirmed. "Hoped for assistance, but my phone has no signal out here." A quick, small smile touched the boy's lips. Understanding. "I can help with that," he stated simply. He didn't ask for permission, didn't hesitate. He immediately knelt beside the useless tire, moved with an easy grace. "My grandpa taught me last summer. Do you have a spare?" Arthur, slightly disarmed by the boy's directness, gestured towards the trunk. He watched. The boy retrieved the spare and tools. Knew exactly where everything was. His movements were efficient, practiced. There was a quiet competence about him that felt far beyond his years. Arthur stepped out of the car. The heat hit him like a wall. He stood awkwardly, watching the boy work. The rhythmic clang of the tire iron was the only sound for a moment. Humility. It was a rare, almost forgotten feeling for Arthur Sinclair. He instinctively reached for his wallet. This was how problems were solved in his world. A transaction, a payment for services rendered. But the boy didn't look up. He remained focused, tightening the lug nuts, checking his work. After a few minutes, he stood, wiped his dirty hands on his already dusty jeans, stepped back. All done. Simple, direct, a small, satisfied smile. Arthur moved quickly, pulled out several large bills, crisp, new. He held them out. "Here," he insisted, "take this. For your time and effort, I truly appreciate it." The boy took a half step back. He raised a hand, palm out, a polite, firm refusal. His gaze was steady, unwavering. "Thank you, sir." His voice remained calm, respectful. "But I don't need anything." He paused, then added the words that struck Arthur with unexpected force. "Just happy to help." Silence. Arthur stood frozen for a beat. The money felt heavy in his hand, suddenly meaningless. He watched the boy give another quick nod, turn around, and start walking back down the road. Calmly, purposefully, as if he hadn't just performed a significant favor for a wealthy stranger. As if unconditional kindness was the most natural thing in the world. The refusal wasn't defiant, it wasn't proud. It was simple, honest, and it resonated deeply within Arthur, unsettling the foundations of his transactional world. He slowly, thoughtfully, put the money back in his wallet. It felt different now, less powerful. He got back into the car. The air conditioning felt colder now. The silence, louder. He started the engine, its smooth purr a stark contrast to the sudden turmoil inside him. He looked in the rearview mirror, watched the boy's small figure retreat, become a speck, disappear into the heat. He pulled away from the roadside, the Mercedes gliding smoothly on its newly fixed tire. But something inside Arthur felt fundamentally unbalanced. Why refuse the money? Why offer help so freely without a single string attached? That simple act of kindness lingered, feeling less like a resolution and more like the beginning of a question he desperately needed to answer. Sleep did not come easily. Not that night. Arthur Sinclair lay awake long after the city lights outside his penthouse window had dimmed. The silence within the cavernous rooms felt different now. Less like peace, more like emptiness. The boy's face lingered behind his closed eyelids. Dusty. Serious. Then that small, knowing smile, and his simple words echoed, relentless. Just happy to help. Why? Why did that simple encounter disturb him so profoundly? It was just a flat tire, a momentary inconvenience on a long-forgotten road. He'd faced corporate crises far more complex. He'd navigated financial storms that could sink nations. Yet, this felt different, deeper. The boy, he didn't even know his name yet, possessed something Arthur recognized, something buried beneath decades of ambition and acquisition. Was it integrity? Or maybe a straightforward innocence Arthur himself had traded away long ago? It felt like looking at a faded photograph of his own youth, a time before success built walls around his heart. The boy hadn't just fixed a tire. He had, unintentionally, exposed a fundamental void in Arthur's carefully constructed world. He needed to understand. It wasn't just about gratitude anymore. It felt more urgent than that, like finding a missing piece of a puzzle he hadn't known was incomplete. He needed to see that quiet confidence again, to understand the source of that simple, unshakable decency. Morning arrived, clear and bright. The decision felt less like a choice, more like a compulsion. He bypassed his usual breakfast meeting, ignored the waiting emails. He would find the boy. He drove the Mercedes back towards the same desolate stretch of highway. The sun climbed higher, already baking the asphalt. He drove slowly this time, scanning the roadside, the fields, the occasional weathered farmhouse set far back from the road. Nothing, just emptiness and heat. He pulled into gas stations, places with peeling paint and the lingering smell of oil. He stopped at roadside diners, the air inside thick with the aroma of stale coffee and frying bacon. He asked, described the boy, polite, confident, maybe 13 or 14. Good with tools. Most people offered only blank stares, a shake of the head, a mumbled "don't know." Then came the subtle shift, the quick, assessing glances. A mechanic, wiping greasy hands on a rag, looked Arthur up and down, took in the expensive car, the tailored clothes. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Rich fella like you," he drawled, suspicion plain in his voice. "Looking for some local kid round here. What's he done?" Arthur felt a prickle of annoyance, followed quickly by a wave of alienation. He didn't belong here. His wealth, usually a key that opened doors, felt like a barrier now, a source of mistrust. He thanked the mechanic curtly, drove on. Hours passed, the initial resolve began to fray, replaced by a growing sense of futility. Maybe this was a foolish errand, a whim born of a sleepless night. Then finally, a break. A small, unassuming cafe with a faded sign. Inside it was cool and smelled faintly of cinnamon. Behind the counter stood an older woman, silver hair neatly pinned, kind eyes that seemed to have seen a great deal. Arthur, almost resigned now, repeated his description one last time. The woman listened patiently, tilted her head, a flicker of recognition. "Well now," she said slowly, her voice warm, like poured honey. "That sounds an awful lot like young Leo." A genuine smile spread across her face. "Always helping folks, that one. Lives with his mama, Clara, over in Harlan. Good people, both of them. Haven't had the easiest time, mind you, but good souls." Leo. The name felt right. Relief washed over Arthur, sharp and sudden. "Harlan," he echoed. He felt a renewed sense of purpose. "Thank you," he said, meaning it more than any polite thanks he'd offered in years. "Thank you very much." The drive to Harlan took nearly an hour. The roads narrowed, winding through rolling green hills. Sunlight filtered through a thick canopy of leaves overhead. It was beautiful country, peaceful, untouched. But Arthur's mind was elsewhere. Harlan, Clara, Leo. What kind of life existed there, so far removed from his own? What hardships had they faced? What values had shaped a boy capable of such simple, profound kindness? He felt anticipation building, and a surprising touch of nervousness. Harlan revealed itself quietly. No fanfare. Just simple streets. Modest houses, mostly wood-framed, sat comfortably close together. Neighbors chatted across low fences. The air felt cleaner here. The pace, slower. It felt real, grounded. He asked for Leo and Clara. The names brought immediate friendly recognition. Directions were given easily, pointing him towards the edge of town, where the houses thinned out, and the woods began. And then he saw it. A small house, standing slightly apart. The paint was undeniably faded, weathered by countless seasons. The front porch sagged just a little, like tired shoulders. Yet it wasn't dilapidated. It was cared for. The small yard was neat. Someone had swept the path. Pots by the steps held bright, resilient flowers, little bursts of color defying the home's humble appearance. It radiated a quiet warmth, a sense of being truly lived in, that his own cold, perfect mansion utterly lacked. He parked the Mercedes a little way down the street. Its polished surface seemed almost indecently luxurious here. He switched off the engine. The sudden silence was broken only by the distant sound of birdsong. He sat there, staring at the house. Doubts surfaced again. Why was he really here? What right did he have to intrude? What could he possibly offer that wouldn't feel like an insult after the boy's refusal? He finally opened the car door, stepped out onto the quiet street. His expensive shoes felt suddenly loud, out of place on the simple dusty path leading to the house. He walked towards the worn wooden door, took a slow, deep breath. The air smelled of pine needles and damp earth. Honest, simple. He raised his hand, knuckles hovering just above the wood, hesitated, then firmly he knocked. What waited for him on the other side? The knock echoed softly. A brief pause hung in the quiet air, then the worn wooden door creaked open. A woman stood framed in the doorway, early 40s perhaps. Tired lines fanned out from kind eyes, but those eyes were sharp, alert, curious. She took in Arthur Sinclair in a single swift appraisal, the expensive suit, the polished shoes, the undeniable air of belonging somewhere vastly different. "Can I help you?" Her voice was quiet, yet held a steady strength, not unfriendly, but guarded. Understandable. Strangers in tailored suits likely didn't appear often on her doorstep. Arthur felt a strange formality settle over him. He cleared his throat. "Good morning," he began, keeping his tone even, respectful. "I apologize for disturbing you. I believe I met your son yesterday." "Leo?" He saw a flicker of recognition, a slight softening around her eyes. He He was kind enough to help me with a flat tire down the road. The guardedness melted instantly, replaced by a warm, genuine smile that transformed her face. "Ah," she breathed, relief evident. "That sounds exactly like my Leo. Always finding someone to help." She chuckled softly, a pleasant sound. "Always getting his hands dirty." "He certainly did," Arthur agreed, a faint smile touching his own lips. "I just wanted to thank him properly. He wouldn't accept any payment yesterday." Clara nodded slowly, a deep understanding in her gaze. It seemed she knew her son well. "No," she said simply, "he wouldn't." She stepped aside then, holding the door open wider in a gesture of simple, unhesitating hospitality. "He's out back now, trying to mend that old fence again. You're welcome to come in and wait if you like." The invitation was offered so naturally, without calculation, that Arthur found himself accepting before he'd fully considered it. "Thank you. I'd appreciate that." He stepped across the threshold, into another world. The air inside was warm, filled with the comforting aroma of freshly baked bread. Simple, wholesome, utterly unlike the faint scent of lemon oil and sterile air that permeated his own home. The main room was small, yes, but spotlessly clean. Furnishings were clearly old, a sofa with slightly frayed arms, a comfortable-looking armchair draped with a colorful handmade quilt. Bookshelves lined one wall, crammed not with leather-bound collector's items, but with well-loved paperbacks and school textbooks. Family photos were everywhere, school pictures chronicling Leo's growth from a gap-toothed boy to the serious-eyed adolescent Arthur had met. Candid snapshots capturing moments of laughter, and pinned proudly amongst them several bright, cheerful drawings clearly done by a much younger Leo. It wasn't opulent, it wasn't curated, it was real, alive with the untidy, comforting energy of lives actually lived within its walls. His own mansion, by contrast, felt like a pristine, echoing museum dedicated to his success. Cold, silent, empty. His gaze snagged on a small, framed photograph placed carefully on a worn end table. Black and white. Faded by time, it showed a young couple standing proudly before a house remarkably similar to this one, holding a small child. Their clothes were plain, work-worn, their faces carried the faint lines of hardship, struggle, yet their eyes held a powerful shared glint of hope, determination. The man in the photo, something about the set of his shoulders, the way he held his head, it stirred a phantom memory within Arthur. A ghost of his own father, perhaps, or maybe the faces of hard-working neighbors from his own impoverished childhood. People who shared what little they had, who understood the currency of kindness long before Arthur learned the language of finance. The feeling was fleeting, like a half-remembered dream, but it left an unexpected warmth, a faint, surprising sense of connection across the decades. Clara followed his gaze. "My husband," she said softly, a trace of sadness mingling with pride in her voice, "taken not long after Leo was born. He worked so hard for us." She didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. Arthur turned from the photo, a newfound respect settling within him. He followed Clara through the small house towards the back door. The backyard was simple, patches of uneven grass, the aforementioned fence in need of constant repair, and in the corner an old metal swing set, its chains rusted, one seat missing. Leo looked up from his work on the fence as they approached, surprise widening his eyes. "Hey, mister," he exclaimed, wiping sawdust from his hands onto his jeans. "What are you doing here?" Arthur smiled, the awkwardness he'd felt earlier dissipating in the boy's straightforward presence. "I told you, Leo. I came back to thank you properly." He walked closer. "What you did yesterday, it meant more than you know." Leo shrugged, picking up a hammer. That easy, genuine manner again. "It wasn't a big deal, sir." "Perhaps not to you," Arthur countered gently, "but it was to me." He leaned against a relatively sturdy section of the fence. Watched the boy work for a moment, the careful way he lined up a piece of scrap wood, the focused swing of the hammer. "I don't think you realize how unusual that kind of help is, Leo, especially helping a stranger. Most people, they expect something in return." Leo paused his hammering. He tilted his head slightly, looking at Arthur with genuine puzzlement, as if the concept itself was foreign. "I don't see it like that," he replied, his voice earnest. "If someone needs help, and I can do it, well, why wouldn't I?" Simple logic, undeniable truth. It cut through Arthur's layers of cynicism like a clean blade. He looked past the boy, at the patched-together fence, the sparse yard, the broken swing set. Evidence of scarcity was everywhere, yet this boy possessed an abundance of something far more valuable. Character. "You have a good head on your shoulders, Leo," Arthur said, the words coming from the heart, "and a good heart to match. Your mother must be very proud." A wide grin split Leo's face. He glanced back towards the house where his mother had just stepped back inside. "She works hard," he said simply. Pride, love, and responsibility, all wrapped in that one short sentence. "I just try to help out where I can." Arthur fell silent, absorbing the boy's words, thinking again of his own parents, their tireless work, the values they tried to instill, hard work, perseverance, kindness, lessons he'd learned well, and then somehow drifted away from, caught up in the relentless pursuit of more. Standing here, in this humble yard, felt like stepping back into a life he barely remembered. Nostalgia mingled with a sharp pang of regret. "Leo," Arthur began, his voice finding a new resolve, "I'd like to do something, for you and your family." Leo immediately straightened up. His expression became cautious, wary even. "We're okay, mister," he said quickly. "Really, we don't need anything." "It's not about need," Arthur insisted gently, wanting the boy to understand. "It's about reciprocity, about acknowledging kindness. You helped me when I was stuck. Please allow me to return the favor in some way." Before Leo could formulate another polite refusal, Clara appeared at the back door, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Leo, time to wash up. Lunch is almost ready." Her gaze shifted to Arthur, warm and direct. "Mr. Sinclair, would you care to join us? It's nothing fancy, just some stew and fresh bread, but you're more than welcome." Arthur hesitated. Sharing a meal in a stranger's home. It was far outside his usual routine of power lunches and solitary dinners. But the sincerity in Clara's eyes, the simple warmth of the offer, it left no room for polite excuses. It felt right. "Thank you, Clara," he said, using her name for the first time. "I'd like that very much." He followed them inside. The kitchen was small, filled with the delicious aroma of simmering stew and the bread he'd smelled earlier, now cooling on a wire rack. The table was modest, surrounded by a collection of mismatched chairs, but it was set with care, simple plates, folded paper napkins, a small jar of wildflowers acting as a centerpiece. Arthur took the offered seat, feeling conspicuously overdressed in his tailored suit amidst the humble surroundings. Leo washed his hands vigorously at the sink, then joined them, his easy smile back in place. As they ate, Arthur found himself drawn into their world. He mostly listened. Leo talked animatedly about school, a science project he was excited about, his friends, his dream, spoken with quiet conviction, of becoming an engineer someday. To build things that last, things that help people. Clara shared stories about their small community. Neighbors looking out for one another, potlucks at the church, people helping each other through tough times. She spoke with a quiet pride, not of possessions, but of connection, of resilience. Arthur listened intently, more intently than he'd listened to anyone in years. He asked occasional questions, genuinely curious. He found himself relaxing, laughing softly at one of Leo's jokes, feeling a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the hearty stew. This simple meal, this easy conversation, this genuine human connection, it filled a void he hadn't consciously acknowledged until that very moment. His own vast home suddenly seemed impossibly cold and empty in comparison. After lunch, as they cleared the few dishes, Arthur turned to Clara, his voice filled with sincere admiration. "You've done a remarkable job raising him, Clara. He has more character, more integrity, than most men I know." Clara's eyes shone with gratitude, but also a quiet realism. "Thank you, Mr. Sinclair. He's a good boy." She sighed softly. "We've certainly had our struggles since his father passed. But it teaches you, doesn't it? Teaches you to appreciate the small things, the important things. Matthew nodded slowly. His mind was already racing, ideas taking shape. He didn't want to overstep, didn't want to impose his wealth in a way that felt like charity. But he couldn't just walk away now. This family, in their quiet dignity, had given him an unexpected gift. A reminder, a course correction. He knew with sudden clarity what he needed to do. He left their home that afternoon, the simple warmth of their hospitality clinging to him more persistently than the lingering scent of baked bread on his expensive suit. The confusion was gone, replaced by a clear, unwavering sense of purpose. He knew what came next. It wasn't about easing his conscience with a check. It wasn't about charity. It was about honoring the simple truth he'd been shown in a humble kitchen over a bowl of stew. It was about connection, about reciprocity. And as he drove away from Harlan, a decisive plan began to form, concrete and actionable. He wouldn't just offer money this time. He would offer something real, something lasting. The powerful engine of the Mercedes hummed quietly on the highway, eating up the miles back towards the city's sharp skyline. But Arthur Sinclair's mind wasn't on the familiar road ahead. It remained firmly rooted in the quiet hills of Harlan. With Leo. With Clara. A decision had been made. Not in a boardroom, not driven by profit, but in a small, warm kitchen over a bowl of stew. A plan was forming, clear, precise, absolutely necessary. Back within the cool, minimalist expanse of his penthouse office, the familiar instruments of his former life felt different. The phone, usually a conduit for multi-million-dollar commands, now felt weighted with a different kind of potential. His extensive contacts list, a meticulously curated network built over decades, lawyers, bankers, industry titans, seemed almost irrelevant for this task. He needed builders, honest ones. He scrolled through his private directory, paused, then dialed Michael Thorne. Thorne wasn't just a contractor, he was a craftsman, a man whose integrity Arthur respected, even if their paths rarely crossed socially. Thorne had handled renovations on Arthur's own properties discreetly and flawlessly. "Arthur, Michael Thorne here." The voice was gruff, practical. "Didn't expect to hear from you these days. Thought you were off sailing somewhere warm, enjoying the spoils." "Michael," Arthur began, his tone direct, businesslike by habit. "I have a project, a personal one." He anticipated the question. "It's a house renovation, small place, in Harlan County." Silence stretched on the other end for a beat. Then Thorne chuckled, a dry, surprised sound. "Harlan? Seriously, Arthur? That's off the beaten path, even for you. Last I checked, your personal projects involved acquiring vineyards in Napa, not fixing porches in Appalachia. What's the story?" Arthur hesitated. He wasn't used to explaining himself. "It's for a family there, Michael," he said simply, deciding against elaboration. "Good people. The house needs work, significant work, structural issues with the porch, roof needs attention, kitchen's outdated. The essentials. I want it done properly, built to last." He added, "And if possible, keep it relatively low-key." "Low-key," Thorne echoed, intrigue coloring his voice now. "All right, Arthur, your money's good, and your requests are never boring. Send over the address and whatever details you have. I'll pull together a reliable crew. Consider it done." More calls followed. Suppliers accustomed to sourcing rare Italian marble or custom-milled hardwoods now fielded inquiries about durable roofing shingles, quality insulation, standard lumber sizes, and reliable basic kitchen appliances. Each conversation carried a similar undercurrent of polite surprise, of unspoken questions. Arthur Sinclair, overseeing this kind of work. It didn't fit the narrative they knew, but his name still carried weight. His promise of prompt, unquestioning payment sealed the deals. Within days, the logistics clicked into place with the smooth efficiency Arthur usually reserved for corporate maneuvers. Trucks were scheduled, materials ordered, a small, skilled crew assembled under Thorne's supervision. Arthur felt a flicker of his old command satisfaction, but it was layered with something new. Anticipation. A sense of purpose that felt cleaner, somehow more substantial than closing a complex merger. He found himself looking again at the mental image of Leo's serious eyes, of Clara's tired but kind face, This was for them. Less than a week after Arthur's visit, Harlan's typical morning tranquility was shattered. The low rumble of heavy engines announced an unusual arrival. 2 large trucks, one carrying lumber, roofing materials, and tools. The other, a crew of 4 workers, led by Thorne himself, carefully navigated the town's narrow, quiet streets. They pulled up, parking strategically near the small house on the edge of town. Doors slammed, voices called out. The tailgate of the supply truck lowered with a metallic clang. A portable generator sputtered to life, its drone cutting through the birdsong. Neighbors emerged onto their porches, drawn by the unfamiliar commotion. Silent observers, curious eyes followed the workers as they began unloading stacks of fresh, sweet-smelling lumber onto the small front lawn. Whispers started, drifting like dandelion seeds on the morning breeze. What's going on at Clara's? Who are these people? Look at that fancy car parked down the street again. Clara came out onto her sagging porch, wiping damp hands on her apron, her brow furrowed with concern at the noise. Her eyes widened as she saw the trucks, the workers, the piles of materials accumulating on her grass. Then she saw Arthur Sinclair standing near the curb, talking quietly with Michael Thorne, a clipboard in his hand. Leo appeared beside her, his eyes huge, mirroring his mother's stunned disbelief. This wasn't just a visitor. This was an invasion. An overwhelming, unbelievable one. Mr. Sinclair, Clara finally stammered, taking a few hesitant steps forward. Her voice trembled slightly. What is all this? Please, you didn't have to do this. We manage fine on our own. Arthur turned, his expression serious but kind. He walked towards them, Thorne following a step behind. Clara, Arthur said gently, his voice calm amidst the surrounding activity. As I said, you and Leo have done far more than just manage. You've built a good life with resilience and grace. He met her tear-filled eyes directly. He saw the confusion, the overwhelm, perhaps even a flicker of fear. He continued, his voice lowering slightly. But you also reminded me of something vital, something I had lost sight of. He gestured broadly at the trucks, the workers. Please, allow me to return the kindness you both showed me. This isn't charity, he emphasized, anticipating the unspoken protest. He wanted her to understand the why. Think of it as reciprocity, a tangible thank you, for fixing more than just a flat tire. Leo stood silently beside his mother, his usual energy replaced by a quiet intensity. He watched the workers moving efficiently. He watched Arthur speaking earnestly to his mother. His young face was a mask of conflicting emotions, wonder, confusion, perhaps a touch of apprehension. Arthur noticed the boy's stillness. He bent down slightly, making eye contact. You taught me a lesson, Leo, Arthur said softly, his voice meant only for the boy. About what it really means to show up for people. Now I want to show up for you and your mother. Leo didn't answer immediately. He just looked at Arthur, his gaze deep and searching. Arthur felt a brief pang. Was this grand gesture overshadowing the simple power of the boy's original act? Would this change him? He hoped not. He truly hoped not. The rhythmic sounds of construction began to fill the morning air. The whine of a saw cutting through fresh lumber, the steady beat of hammers, the low murmur of workers' voices. The initial shock on Clara's face slowly gave way to a dawning, tearful realization. It was real. This unbelievable gift was actually happening. The transformation of their small, worn house had begun. But as the work started, unfolding this unexpected new chapter, deeper questions lingered. How would this sudden influx truly reshape their lives? And what unforeseen consequences might ripple out from this millionaire's grand act of reciprocity? Days bled into weeks. The once sleepy edge of Harlan now pulsed with a steady, purposeful energy. The sharp scent of fresh sawdust mingled with the aroma of turned earth. Hammers echoed in a rhythmic beat. Saws whined their high-pitched song. The small house wasn't just undergoing repairs, it felt like something more profound. It was being reborn, board by board, nail by nail. The transformation was meticulous, thorough. Michael Thorne's crew worked with quiet efficiency, their skill evident in every detail. The sagging front porch, a symbol of weary endurance, was dismantled entirely. Strong new posts were sunk deep into concrete footings. Thick, pressure-treated planks formed a sturdy, level floor. It was built solid, built to last. A welcoming platform, no longer a precarious step. Above, the roofline changed dramatically. Old curled shingles, witnesses to countless seasons, were scraped away. The bare wooden sheathing beneath was inspected carefully. Near the chimney, Frank, the burly foreman, pointed out an area of dark, soft wood to Arthur during one of his frequent visits. Hidden decay, a potential problem left unchecked. Arthur didn't hesitate for a second. "Fix it, Frank," he instructed immediately. "Whatever it takes, do it right." There would be no shortcuts here, no cosmetic fixes masking deeper issues. Thorne's crew replaced the damaged sections, laid down heavy black felt paper, and then meticulously installed rows of new, dark grey architectural shingles. Solid protection against the elements for years to come. Inside, the change was equally striking. Walls that had been dull, marked by the scuffs and stains of daily life, were smoothed, prepped, and painted. Clara had chosen the colours, a cheerful buttery yellow for the kitchen, making the small space feel brighter, larger. A calming sky blue for Leo's bedroom. Sunlight, once muted by grimy panes, now streamed through newly installed energy-efficient windows, illuminating rooms that felt suddenly refreshed, hopeful. The worn, cracked linoleum in the kitchen and hallway vanished. Underneath, surprisingly, lay original hardwood floors. Scratched and dull, yes, but fundamentally sound. The crew sanded them down, erasing decades of wear, then applied coats of clear sealant, bringing out the rich, warm grain of the aged wood. It lent an unexpected elegance to the humble home. The kitchen saw the most practical upgrades. Clean, durable laminate countertops replaced the chipped and stained formica. A new, deeper stainless steel sink went in, along with a modern faucet. Frank skillfully reconfigured some cabinets, creating more usable storage space. Arthur had ordered simple, reliable appliances, a slightly larger refrigerator, a new stove. Nothing extravagant, but everything functional. Everything designed to ease the daily burdens for Clara. Leo initially was a whirlwind of youthful energy, trying to help in any way he could. He carried small scraps of lumber, attempted to sweep piles of sawdust far larger than himself. His eagerness was endearing, but Arthur saw the potential for distraction, even accidental injury around the active worksite. One sunny afternoon, Arthur found Leo trying to help pry off old baseboards with a screwdriver far too large for his hands. Arthur approached gently. "Leo," he said, putting a hand lightly on the boy's shoulder, making him pause. "I admire your enthusiasm, truly, but your main job right now?" He smiled warmly. "Is maybe to enjoy being a kid. Watch, ask questions, learn all you want. But let Frank and his team handle the heavy work, okay?" Leo looked up, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes, but he nodded. He understood. From then on, his help transformed into intense observation. He'd find a spot just outside the immediate work zone, perched on the new porch steps, leaning against a tree, and simply watch. His eyes missed nothing. The way the workers measured twice before cutting once. The techniques they used to hang drywall smoothly. The complex angles involved in framing the new porch roof. His curiosity became focused, directed. He started approaching the workers during their brief water breaks, his earlier shyness replaced by an earnest desire to understand. He gravitated towards Frank, the experienced foreman who seemed to possess an endless well of practical knowledge. "Frank," Leo asked one day, pointing towards a complex joint where two roof beams met. "Why did you cut it that way, with that angle?" Frank, initially surprised by the boy's persistent attention, had grown fond of his sharp questions. He paused his work, happy to explain. He took out a pencil, sketched the joint on a scrap piece of wood, showed Leo how the angle distributed the weight, explained the difference between a lap joint and a mitre joint. He spoke plainly, respectfully, recognizing the genuine thirst for knowledge in the boy's eyes. Their informal lessons became a regular occurrence. Frank showed Leo how to properly use a level, explaining the importance of plumb and square. "See that bubble, Leo? Gotta be right smack in the middle. Everything depends on starting right. He taught him to identify different types of wood by their grain and weight. He explained the basics of electrical wiring as the electrician worked, pointing out breakers and circuits. He even let Leo, under close supervision, use a power drill to sink a few screws into a non-structural piece, teaching him about torque and control. Leo absorbed every piece of information, like dry ground soaking up rain. His questions grew more sophisticated. He started talking about load-bearing walls, insulation R values, the benefits of cross-ventilation. His bright, intelligent mind was clearly sparked by the practical application of geometry, physics, and skill unfolding before him. Arthur often watched these interactions from a distance, a quiet, profound satisfaction warming him from the inside out. This felt fundamentally good, meaningful in a way closing a 10-figure deal never had. He saw the spark in Leo's eyes, the pure, unadulterated joy of learning, of understanding how things worked, how things were built. It reminded Arthur, with a pang, of his own youthful fascination with mechanics, with systems, long before that interest was channeled solely into the complex, often ruthless, mechanics of finance. How had he strayed so far from that simple, honest engagement with the world? He wasn't just overseeing a renovation. He was witnessing, perhaps even nurturing, the first blossoming of a young man's passion. And in doing so, he felt a part of himself, long dormant, slowly reawakening. The pursuit of wealth had brought him luxury, power, isolation. This unexpected project in Harlan, it was bringing him something far more valuable. Purpose, connection, a quiet, grounding joy. As the final touches were being put on the house, the last coat of paint drying, the new light fixtures installed, the yard cleaned of debris, the sense of completion was palpable. One golden evening, the work crew packing up their tools for the day, Clara found Arthur standing alone on the new front porch. The transformation was staggering. The house stood solid, clean and bright against the twilight sky. A symbol of renewal. Clara approached him quietly. She stood beside him for a moment, simply looking at her reborn home. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of overwhelm, but of profound, quiet gratitude. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was thick with emotion, barely a whisper. "Arthur," she began, her gaze still fixed on the house. I keep trying to find the words." She gestured helplessly. "You didn't just repair wood and plaster, you repaired something deeper. You gave us more than a fixed roof. You gave us a fresh start, security. You gave my Leo a chance to see kindness on such a scale." She finally turned to look at him, tears streaming freely now. "How can we possibly thank you?" Arthur felt his own throat tighten. He met her gaze, his own eyes unexpectedly moist. He shook his head, a small self-deprecating gesture. "Clara," he said softly, his voice husky. "There's no need for thanks." He looked out at the darkening hills, then back at her earnest face. "You and Leo, you gave me the greater gift. You reminded an old man what truly matters in this life. It isn't the portfolio statements or the corner office." He smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "It's this. Connection. Kindness. Making a small difference." He paused. "Honestly, I believe I'm the one who owes you." The hammers were silent now. The saws still. The physical work was nearly done, the house standing as a testament to generosity and skilled labor. But standing there on the sturdy new porch, bathed in the soft light of the approaching twilight, Arthur knew the most significant construction was still ongoing. It was happening inside the walls of that house, nurturing seeds of hope and possibility. It was happening in the bright, curious mind of a boy now dreaming of building things himself. And most surprisingly, it was happening within the carefully guarded heart of a lonely millionaire. What structures of real value would ultimately rise from this foundation of unexpected kindness? The final day arrived not with the clang of hammers, but with the murmur of happy voices. Sunlight streamed down, illuminating the transformed house. Fresh paint gleamed. The new porch invited entry. The scent of grilled barbecue drifted on the warm afternoon air from a neighbor's yard. This wasn't a planned party. It was simpler, more genuine. It was Harlan's way of saying, "Welcome home, Clara." Welcome home, Leo. Neighbors filled the yard and spilled onto the porch. They came bearing gifts of food, fragrant casseroles, pies still warm from the oven, jars of bright homemade jam. Simple offerings, given with open hands and open hearts. They walked through the house in small, admiring groups, their voices filled with genuine delight. Clara, it's just beautiful. Look at this kitchen. Leo, your room. It looks fantastic. They even fixed that leaky faucet in the bathroom. The whispers of earlier skepticism had vanished completely, replaced now by smiles, by shared joy for one of their own family finally catching a well-deserved break. Old Man Hemlock, a fixture on his own porch down the street, known for his reserved nature, approached Arthur. He offered a firm handshake, clapped him solidly on the shoulder. "Did good, Sinclair," he grunted, a rare smile cracking his weathered face. "Real good." The kind woman from the cafe arrived with a huge pitcher of freshly brewed iced tea, her eyes twinkling as she looked from the house to Arthur. "Told you that Leo was a special one," she murmured with a knowing wink. Acceptance, warm and unconditional. Leo was a blur of motion, pure, uncontainable joy radiated from him. He raced around the yard, laughing, showing his friends the sturdy new swing set. He proudly led tours of his newly painted room. Arthur overheard him explaining to another boy, with surprising technical detail, how Frank had reinforced the porch roof supports. The spark ignited during the renovation was clearly burning brightly. Arthur stood near the porch railing, nursing a glass of the sweet iced tea. He watched the easy flow of conversation, the shared laughter, the simple, unpretentious celebration. He thought of the countless galas and fundraisers he'd attended and hosted over the years. Lavish events, calculated displays of wealth and influence, champagne flowed freely. Conversation was often guarded, transactional, networking disguised as socializing. Those events felt cold now, hollow, meaningless compared to the authentic warmth radiating from this simple backyard gathering in Harlan. He hadn't felt this light, this genuinely present and content, in longer than he could remember. It was a quiet revelation, a profound recalibration. Clara found him there, her face glowing with a serene happiness Arthur hadn't seen before. She handed him a plate piled high with food from the potluck spread. "You need to eat too, Arthur," she insisted gently. They stood together for a moment, watching the scene. "You've done more than fix a house," Clara said again, her voice soft but clear, filled with emotion. "Much more." Her gaze was steady, meeting his. "You brought possibility back into our lives, eased a burden I didn't even realize I was carrying until it was lifted." She smiled, a little sadly perhaps. "And you gave my Leo a glimpse of a different kind of future. Showed him that hard work and kindness. Sometimes they do get noticed." She paused. "And watching you these past weeks, I think maybe you found something important for yourself here too." Arthur looked down at the plate, then out at the gathering. He nodded slowly. "I have, Clara," he admitted, his voice quiet, utterly sincere. "More than I ever expected." He finally understood. "I spent so many years building an empire, chasing the next deal, accumulating things." He shook his head slightly, a gesture of self-reflection. "I thought that was success. I thought it meant strength." He met her eyes again. "Turns out, true strength looks a lot like your resilience. True wealth," he smiled faintly, "feels a lot like this afternoon." Later, as the sun began its slow descent, casting long, warm shadows across the yard, Leo approached them. The boundless energy of the day had softened into a thoughtful seriousness. He stood before Arthur, his young face earnest. "Mr. Sinclair," he began, his voice clear and steady, "I've been thinking a lot about all of this." He gestured around them, at the house, the yard, the lingering neighbors. "It's incredible, what you did for us. And he took a breath. "I want to do that someday. I want to build things for people, help them, like you helped us." Arthur felt a powerful surge of warmth, of pride, of hope. He placed a firm, reassuring hand on Leo's shoulder, looked him directly in the eye. "Leo," he said, his voice full of conviction, "you already are that person. You started this entire chain of events. He smiled, a deep, genuine smile. That day on the road? Your simple act of kindness, that was the cornerstone. Everything else? It's just the house built upon that foundation. He held the boy's gaze. Don't ever lose that kindness, Leo. Promise me, don't let the world chip away at that good heart. He paused then, his expression turning more serious, drawing from the hard-won, often painful lessons of his own life. Let me tell you something else, son. Something important. He leaned in slightly, his voice lower, more intimate. It might seem easy to be kind when you don't have much. The real challenge, the one that tests your soul, is holding on to that kindness when you do have more. When success comes, when power is within your reach, he thought of his own past mistakes, the moments where ambition had overshadowed empathy. Don't let those things change who you are at your core. Remember why helping people matters. Remember this feeling today. He squeezed Leo's shoulder gently. That understanding, that's the most valuable thing you can ever build, and it will last longer than any house. Leo listened intently, his young face serious, absorbing the weight and wisdom of Arthur's words. He nodded slowly, a deep understanding dawning in his eyes. He wouldn't forget. When it was finally time for Arthur to leave, as twilight painted the sky in soft shades of purple and rose, Clara and Leo walked him to his car. The farewells were warm, easy, filled with unspoken understanding and genuine affection. No longer millionaire and recipients, just friends. Clara's tearful smile held only gratitude now. Leo's wide grin held promise. Those images were etched into Arthur's memory as he drove away. This wasn't an ending. He knew that with certainty. It was simply the end of the beginning. The weeks and months that followed proved him right. Arthur found himself drawn back to Harlan again and again. Not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire for connection. The visits became less about overseeing anything, more about simply being there. He'd share coffee with Clara on the new porch. He'd talk with Leo about his progress in school, about his burgeoning interest in engineering and design. He brought books on architecture, discussed physics concepts Leo was learning. He even helped Leo research potential scholarships for college down the road. He was no longer Mr. Sinclair, the wealthy benefactor. He was Arthur, a mentor, a friend. He watched Leo grow, not just taller but wiser, his initial spark of passion carefully nurtured into a steady flame. And Arthur changed too. The trips to Harlan became his anchor, a return to something real in a world that often felt artificial. He spent less time managing his vast portfolio, more time walking the quiet hills around Harlan, or simply sitting on Clara's porch, listening. The emptiness inside him, once a cavernous ache, was slowly, steadily filling with something warm. Something substantial, something that felt, for the first time in many, many years, like peace. Closing, mini hook, final thought. And so the story that began with a simple flat tire on a lonely Kentucky road found its true lasting repair not merely in rebuilt walls or a fixed roof, but in restored connections and redeemed hearts. An old millionaire, rich in fortune but starved in spirit, finally learned life's most expensive, most valuable lesson from a young boy who possessed little more than calloused hands and a heart full of uncomplicated kindness. It proved, perhaps, that the greatest wealth we can ever hope to build isn't measured by what we accumulate for ourselves, but by the foundations of hope and generosity we choose to lay for others. Arthur Sinclair had billions, but it took a chance encounter with young Leo, a boy with little more than kindness in his heart, to teach him life's most valuable lesson. Their story is a powerful reminder, isn't it? That genuine connection is worth more than any fortune. That a simple act of kindness, offered freely, can ripple outwards, changing not just one life, but many. It truly shows that the best parts of life aren't about what we have, but what we choose to give. What did Arthur and Leo's journey make you think about? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a like and consider sharing it with someone who might need this message today. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. Thank you so much for watching.